Birth rarely goes to plan, and that is not a failure at all. I wish I'd known this one before. In theory, I knew it, but I wish I knew that it was okay, that your birth doesn't have to go the way you imagined, and that you can feel sad and you can grieve that. And it's not shameful to say that you're sad and that you're grieving that.
Hello and welcome to Demystifying Child's Play. I'm Ruth Furco, and if you're a mum who has birthed a child in any which way, then this week is the one for you. Today, I'm talking with Jade from Your Mama Journey. Jade is an accredited mental health social worker, and she has created guided journals especially designed to take you through reflecting on your birth experience, with specific journals for vaginal or C-section births. Your Mama Journey was born from her deeply personal experience and a profound realization. Jade found herself navigating the complexities of motherhood after an unexpected emergency C-section. As she held her newborn daughter, she felt a mix of joy and confusion, realizing that the journey of motherhood was far more intricate than she'd ever imagined. So today, we're going to chat about bringing our babies into the world, unexpected circumstances, and processing that blur of birth experience. Now, if this does bring up any uncomfortable thoughts or feelings, I highly recommend chatting with a friend, healthcare professional, or maybe you might want to get one of Jade's journals to help you process the crazy experience that turned you into a mum. So welcome, Jade.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for inviting me into your space. I'm so happy to be here and to be talking about the journals, but also just learning a bit more about you and your space as well.
And that's something really interesting is that, as I've just said, everyone's got a different experience of what's brought us to being a mum, and everyone's is unique and everyone is valid. So it's awesome being able to talk through today. So today what I've done is I've asked Jade to share her top 5 points that she wished she knew as she navigated through her birth and early postpartum journey. So let's jump straight into number 1. What would your first one be?
Oh, now I love these questions. I love that you asked me these questions. Number 1, that being a mum can feel incredibly lonely, even though you're quite literally never alone. This was a big one that I really wish someone had spoken to me about, because we get the checklist. We get the what you pack in your hospital bag. We get the hypnobirthing classes. We get so much information there. But no one really talks about what those first few days and weeks and months of postpartum feel like. And there's so much noise, but we feel so alone and we just have nowhere to put that. That noise is all of those emotions, all of those thoughts, all of those worries, that excitement, that joy, introducing people to baby, all of that, but we just feel so alone because so much of it is trapped in here. And this is quite literally why I created the journal. I needed somewhere to put that. And then I wanted to give the mums that I work with and mums in general a space to feel heard and seen, even if it's just by themselves. Your journal isn't for other people to read if you don't want it to be, but you can, but it's also just for you to read back and go, wow, look at what this person was going through. So that being a mum can feel incredibly lonely, even when you're never alone.
That's such a great one to start with. And motherhood, especially those early days, are so real and so raw, and there is nothing that does actually prepare us for it. You can talk about it in antenatal classes. You may have a family member or a friend who's recently given birth. But I do remember when I was having my first, my friend was having her second at the same time, and she was asking me all these newborn questions. And I was like, you're the expert. You've already had one. But she said it was such a blur. She just didn't remember. And then I remember having my second one, being like, oh my goodness, I now know what you mean. It is just such a blur. And I think that's how our body tricks us into having subsequent children, because we do have that blur. But you're right as well. It does feel so lonely. For me, with my first birth, we were in hospital for a while afterwards, and we were in a shared room. So my husband wasn't able to stay. And while I was very loose with my birth plan, I just wanted a healthy baby and healthy me. And my husband staying, I thought, was just a given. And so that loneliness started straight away. And I didn't realize how much it impacted me until I was able to have him come back in the mornings and just be like, oh my goodness, there's someone here with me again. Even though I was in a shared room, just so different. So that's such a good first one. It can be incredibly lonely, and it probably will be for a lot of people, because there's so much that you're navigating through and changing yourself. And you've got those crazy hormones as well. So what would be your second point?
Yeah, good one. So good transition. The second point, the emotional recovery matters just as much as the physical. As an accredited mental health social worker working in mental health, you'd think that this one was just a given for me. Of course, I knew that in theory. And people talk a lot about the physical recovery after birth. When we talk to other mums about how was your birth, we often talk about the physical first. But I didn't realize just how important it was to process the emotional impact too. So, whether it was grief, trauma, even just feeling overwhelmed, those emotions, they don't disappear on their own. So, the idea of processing them, that was the part that helped me reconnect with myself. And I want to flag here that sounds like a very active thing to be doing. And when do you have time to do that when you're a new mum with a newborn? But it's just to say that the emotional part matters just as much as the physical, but there's no timeline on that. We don't say your emotional recovery should happen by 6 weeks postpartum. And if you go to see your doctor, you still feel some unexpected emotions or an excess of emotions, that there's something wrong there. Absolutely not. Again, the idea of the journal was that you get to pick it up and put it down when you need to. And for some people, that is 10 years after they've had a baby. I'm working with mums at the moment, and their children have just turned 10, and we are talking about their pregnancy, labor, and birth at that point because we're recognizing that perhaps the things that have happened in that period is impacting them now and has been impacting them throughout their motherhood journey. For others, they pick up that book while they're still in hospital with their newborn. It's completely different for every single person. And a really good way of figuring out whether you need to check in with that emotional side is to talk to the people around you, partners, parents, friends, because as mums, we are really good at masking how our true feelings. We are really good at masking our true feelings for the betterment of the people around us. And you've just been given this beautiful little soul to take care of. So, of course, you're going to do that first. All I'm asking is for you to also recognize the emotional recovery matters just as much as the physical.
Yes, that is so important. And looking after our baby, we can only do that as well as we look after ourselves. And it is so easy to sweep it under the mat, think, okay, I've done my 6 weeks of recovery. I should be all active now. Like I should be mentally and physically and everything go. But actually, that's not the case. And what I really love is how you're called your mama journey. That journey is so important because it never stops. You've birthed this child, but you had that pregnancy beforehand. And you're going to have this child with you for the rest of your life. So it's this journey as you go through and evolve. And really interesting, you're saying that you've been working with mums currently who have got 10-year-olds and you're able to trace back a whole lot of feelings back to that birth stage. So it's really interesting thinking about how everything is impacted by how we become a mum. So number one was that being a mum can feel incredibly lonely. Number two is that emotional recovery matters too. So what would your number three be?
You don't have to feel grateful all the time. I know that this one may trigger a lot of different feelings and thoughts for people. You don't have to feel grateful all the time. I know that there's this huge pressure to feel grateful because maybe you have a healthy baby, but that doesn't mean you're not also allowed to feel exhausted or anxious or sad or grieving the birth that you didn't have. I wish I'd known that part of it. I wish I'd known that both things can be true at the same time, that I could love my baby and I could struggle at the same time. There was a really big moment for me. I think I'd not long come home from hospital. And this was one of the key moments where I went, I need to get a lot of this out because I'm masking. I feel quite numb. I'm really struggling to remain present in the moment with my daughter. What's happening here for me? And I could hear this kind of internal dialogue saying, you should feel grateful. This is amazing. She's healthy. You're okay. You're going to get better. This is exactly what you wanted. And only by sitting and writing a few things out and checking in with myself, I was able to say, you know what? I'm actually grieving the birth that I didn't have. I'm grieving and feeling sad and feeling that I failed somehow. I was in the ICU and my daughter was being taken back and forth by my husband to have feeds with me while I was in the ICU. I should have done better somehow. Obviously, I sit here and I listen to myself saying this and going, of course not. Of course, you didn't plan this. Of course, if you had absolute control of the situation, that's not how things would have gone. But I think it's really important to just really unpack that idea of you don't have to be grateful all the time, that two things can be true at the same time, that multiple things can be true at the same time, that you can love your baby and be grateful and be happy, and also have all those other emotions playing out at the same time for multiple different reasons. And as my daughter's getting older, I've got a just 2-year old now, we're also recognizing that things like irritation and impatience and maternal rage and some of those things start showing up. And so I think as our motherhood journeys go on, it's even more important to recognize this as we go. I can be grateful and I can also want to put my earphones in and listen to music right now.
Yes, that is so key. And I think that kind of leads into the idea of intrusive thought. That as mum, it is so normal to get those intrusive thoughts, those really bad negative ones about motherhood, about our kids, but it's all about what we do with them. And so if someone is finding, if you're listening and you're thinking, I'm getting a lot of these intrusive thoughts, make sure, as I said at the start, that you reach out to a healthcare professional, you reach out to your friends. You might start some journaling using one of Jade's journals, but make sure you do something about it, because while intrusive thoughts, those negative thoughts, thinking I could have done better, what if I'd done this? If I'd done this in pregnancy, my child wouldn't have XYZ. It is normal to get them, but it's how we deal with them. It's how we outwork them. It's how we go through them so that we are letting them go and not holding them on and just dwelling on them. So talking about our emotions is so key, and it's so important to know that we don't have to be grateful all the time. We've got these wonderful little blessings. Our life has changed in so many different ways, and it is hard, and it is something to work through, and it is, as we said, a journey. So number one was being a mum can feel very lonely. Number two was emotional recovery matters just as much as physical. Number three, don't need to feel grateful all the time. So what is number four?
That birth rarely goes to plan, and that is not a failure at all. I feel like I've said this a lot today. I wish I'd known this one before. In theory, I knew it, but I wish I knew that it was okay, that your birth doesn't have to go the way you imagined, and that you can feel sad and you can grieve that. And it's not shameful to say that you're sad and that you're grieving that. And that can also not be a failure on your end either. I absolutely had a vision of how things would unfold for me. And when it didn't go the way that I hoped, I carried a lot of guilt for that. But recognizing that birth is unpredictable and letting go of that perfect plan earlier on in my journey could have absolutely saved me a lot of emotional pain, because I know it's something I said in number one. There are so many things that we do to prepare for birth. And even though they say in those birthing classes, this is just a plan, this is just a hope, things could change from there. I was so used to my body doing what I wanted it to do. I was so used to having expectations, and those expectations generally matching here and there. But my birth was complete opposite of what I'd hoped for. And I remember in doing my birth preparation, I remember looking at all the different vaginal births and all the different pain relief options, all of those things. And then the C-section information came, and I went, no, I don't need to look at that. That's not for me. I recognize now that if I was counseling myself, I would have said, well, for the idea of building in some psychological flexibility here, let's just read the C-section stuff. Let's just plan for everything. And I think because I limited myself in that way at the very beginning, I didn't have that psychological flexibility around my labor and birth. I didn't hold the underlying knowledge that birth is unpredictable. I came out of it feeling like I was a failure. I've had a mum say to me just recently who's had a C-section, I feel like I failed. And this is why I always talk about this point with mums, depending on what's happened for their birth, even, vaginal births, mums can have this sense of failure. But I always make a point of talking about this in depth in their individual experiences, because it's so important to walk away from our children's births and go, didn't go as planned, but it's not a failure.
That is so important. I think probably all of us have got experience either ourselves or with friends who feel like in some way, shape or form that if they haven't given birth vaginally, they're not enough of a woman or things like that. Or if they've had to use too many drugs, which they deem they didn't think they were going to have to use, they're not a woman. Or there's so many ways that we just get caught up in our own ideals and what we think. And as you said, it's great to have a birth plan, and it's really hard to ease out and let go a little bit. But having all those different areas that you've looked into, that you've thought about, Even if you're thinking, no, I'm not going to do a cesarean, that's not for me, actually being aware of those different areas so that if it does come up, at least you've got a little bit of mental preparation beforehand. So yeah, that birth rarely goes to plan is such a good one to hold on to and to think about. So point number one, being a mum can be incredibly lonely, even when you're never alone and probably feeling very touched out. Number two, emotional recovery matters just as much as the physical. Number three, you don't have to be grateful all the time. Number four was that birth rarely goes to plan and it's not a failure. What would number five be?
Number five, I had to put in there because it was such a key experience for me. Writing my story was one of the most healing things that I could do for myself. And the reason I wanted to put this one in here is because I wasn't a big journaler beforehand. I rarely picked up a pen and paper and put things in writing for myself. I'm sure we've all perhaps come across the word, and I always get confused how to pronounce it correctly. I've heard it a few different ways, but that matriescence, those identity shifts that come inherently with motherhood, it's such a significant part of our life. But because every mother has given birth, we can move past it so quickly. Whether we had the birth that we hoped for, whether there was variations in that, whether we had a birth that was absolutely unexpected, the shift into motherhood shifts us completely, and we are doing what we can to re-find our normal. Putting it in writing and honoring that part of your journey, that your mama journey, as you put it so well before, it's just been such a game changer for me. So look, I wish I'd planned to journal anyway. I wish I'd planned to journal after I'd had my baby and it was something that I'd put on my agenda to do. I didn't, and it was a reactive response. And I cannot minimize how healing it was for me. By putting my story into my own words, it helped me make sense of it. It helped me realize what that person had been through. And it helped me come out the other side feeling like I had the power to rewrite how I experienced those moments. I'm not rewriting my story. I can't rewrite the past, but I can rewrite how I experienced those moments. And what that does for me and what that can do for mums is that we're not carrying the things that happen to us in our pregnancy, labor, and birth experiences or early postpartum. We're not carrying those into the rest of our parenting journeys. I have an experience recently where I think I said to you before we started recording, my daughter's just not long started daycare. The mix of emotions, the tears, the anger, again, the revisiting the grief, I was really aware that in taking her to daycare, I was going straight back to those moments when I was in ICU and she was in the maternity ward and taken back and forth every 3 hours. For 72 hours, I was not holding my daughter for longer than 30 minutes max. And I knew that everything that was showing up for me when I was dropping her off to daycare and struggling to go to work relates straight back to that. If I didn't have that knowledge, I might be questioning myself more. There might be excess self-criticism. I might not be able to go to work because I couldn't drop her at daycare. So this is why it's so important in any way that makes sense to you. Journaling is one option, but this is why it's so important to get those thoughts and emotions out through such a significant period of your life. And that's why I built the journal, so that there's an option there for the mums who need it and want it.
I would completely agree with that whole idea around journaling. For me, with my first birth, it was an unexpected breech birth. And so that had a hospital ambulance ride and just a whole lot of people in a room and just a bit more crazy than what I was expecting. And it was my first real experience in my life of not being in control. A lot of us have come into motherhood having these careers where we've got a lot of control. We may have been climbing up the ladder. We knew what we were doing every day. And suddenly through labor and birth and then having this newborn, there is so much in our life that is out of control. And so by grabbing that pen, being able to journal, it gives you that little bit of control back where you can actually revisit and replay and rerun through in a way you can get out your thoughts and feelings. And after my birth, I requested my birth notes from the hospital because they did amazingly. I was so out of it. I just did not remember so many aspects and I wanted to revisit it. And I knew there'd been a midwife scribing down everything because there'd been so many people in the room. Someone was there primarily just to write down what was happening. And I got those birth notes. And it wasn't until my oldest was nearly 2 or just about 2 that I actually revisited them and then did my journaling. As you're saying, it's not all done in the moment. And I think I needed that gap. And I looked in my boy's book that I'd been writing, and I thought I'd written out the birth story, and I'd written birth story. Waters broke at 2 a.m. It felt like a water balloon being thrown at me. And that's where I'd stopped. And in my mind, I'd written everything out already. And I think that was where I was at when I started writing it. So being able to then stop, reflect when he was a bit older, when I was in a different headspace as well, was really important for me, actually going through that birth journey and knowing a bit more what happened, being a bit more in control, and just reflecting on all those emotions and feelings that brought me with my first child into being a mum.
Yeah.
So yes, journaling is so important, and it's, as you said, different for everyone, but it's definitely worth a try.
Yeah, you're absolutely right there. It's worth a try. You know what? And whether that's a blank page, whether that is a journal that does have prompts that can help you along the way, whether that's a couple of dot points in the notes section of your phone, everyone's different, but have a go at it, because I think you'll find making space to be honest with yourself and then reread that honesty back to you, that is incredibly healing.
Yes, definitely. I could not agree with you more. So we have covered a lot today, Jade. That has been fantastic. Now, if anyone's thinking, I'd really like to revisit these points, don't worry. You don't need to listen to the whole episode 20 million times so your brain is actually taking it in. All of these notes will be on the blog. So that's playschemas.com/blog. That's play, schemas.com/blog. And I'll also have there where to find Jade. So I'm just going to run through those top 5 again, and then Jade will be able to share where to find you. And if you do want to have your guided journaling experience, what you can do. So number 1, she shared that being a mum can feel incredibly lonely, even if you're never alone. Number 2 is that emotional recovery matters just as much as the physical. Number 3, you don't have to feel grateful all the time. Number 4, that birth rarely goes to plan, as in hardly goes to plan, and that's not a failure. And number 5, for her and for me, writing the stories was one of the most healing things that they could do. So if we wanted to contact you, if we wanted to find you, Jade, where would we find you?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, the best place to find me is on Instagram at yourmamajourney.co. If you send me a message on Instagram, I will always reply. I love having chats with mums on Instagram, checking in, seeing how they're going. Sometimes they ask me, what's the journal about? Do you think it's right for me? What does it involve? I can share a snippet of the journal for free as well, just so you're checking in to see if it's something that suits you. Please send me a message. I would love to have a chat to you. If you want to jump straight in and grab a journal, you can just go straight to our website, which is www.yourmamajourney.com. Please reach out. I'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jade. And remember, you don't need to remember these places. I'll have them on the show notes and also under this episode so you can easily access them. You can easily access Jade. Again, Jade, thank you so much for coming on today. Thank you so much for sharing some of your story and those top 5 about coming into motherhood and how crazy amazing it is, but how there's so much that goes with it. I just want to finish off saying that if you became a mother through adoption, you are 100% a mother as well. Today, we've just been talking about different ways of birth, but big amazingness to you as well if that's how you've become a mother as well. So everyone, thank you so much for tuning in today. Remember, today is a great day to play. And if you haven't written down your birth story, grab a pen, grab a piece of paper, and spend just even 5 minutes doing a couple of bullet points to get you started. If you've ever wished that you had a group of parents who just get it, I would like to welcome you to the Play Schemas Collective. It's where you can ask questions without judgment, share those little wins only another parent would understand, and dive deeper into your child's play with people who speak your language. Join us at playschemas.com/collective for more information. We can't wait to have you on the inside.